The desert was asleep. It was one of those nights when the stars stretched forever, sharp as pinholes in black silk, and the wind wandered lazily over dunes that hadn't felt rain in years. Elias Rourke sat on the porch of his cabin, an old, tin-roofed thing that looked more like a forgotten outpost than a home. He had built it himself, plank by plank, after leaving behind the noise of the cities, the wars, the corruption, the artificial sun that never dimmed. He had run from all of it, trading neon skylines for a horizon of silence. His only companions were an old solar generator, a cracked radio that played static most nights, and the stars. Tonight, they were unusually bright. Too bright. He leaned back in his chair, squinting at the sky. At first, he thought it was a meteor, a burning line of green cutting across the heavens. But it didn't fade like meteors do. It grew larger, brighter, closer. Then it split. The sound came seconds later, a deep, trembling roar that rolled across the desert floor, shaking the dust from his porch beams. Elias bolted upright, watching as a second object followed the first, smaller, trailing smoke like black ribbons. Both vanished behind the ridge to the east. And then silence again. But it wasn't natural silence anymore. It listened back. Elias hesitated only a moment before grabbing his flashlight and his desert rover, a patched-up, all-terrain buggy he'd rebuilt from old military parts. The engine coughed, then roared to life. He drove toward the ridge, sun flying up behind him like sparks. The air smelled of ozone and burnt metal the closer he got. When he reached the crest, he stopped. His breath caught. Below him lay something impossible. The crater wasn't wide, maybe 50 meters, but at its heart rested a craft like no human hand had built. It was smooth, seamless, and alive. Its hull pulsed faintly, glowing veins of light snaking beneath the metallic surface as though blood flowed beneath skin. Parts of it were still burning, releasing bursts of violet smoke that shimmered unnaturally in the moonlight. Elias climbed down carefully, boots crunching over shattered glass and melted sand. His flashlight beam played over the wreckage. The symbols etched along the hull weren't from any language he knew. They seemed to move, shifting subtly when he looked away. He'd seen plenty of classified tech during his time as an engineer for the orbital infrastructure cores, but nothing like this. This wasn't human. And then he heard it. A sound, faint, ragged, like breathing. He followed it toward a section of the hull that had split open. A soft, rhythmic flicker came from inside, accompanied by the faint hum of machinery dying slowly. The interior was dark, lined with tubes and translucent panels that dripped some luminescent fluid. And there, amid the wreckage, lay a figure. She was curled on her side, half covered by shards of the ship's own skin. For a moment Elias thought she was human, but then the light caught her face, and he realized she wasn't. Her skin wasn't pale, but silver, smooth, and faintly reflective, as though it absorbed the starlight rather than reflected it. Strands of luminous white hair floated weightlessly around her head, untouched by gravity. Her eyes were half open, glowing faintly blue like the last flicker of an ember. She looked young, not a child, but fragile, with a stillness that terrified him. Elias knelt beside her. Her chest rose shallowly. There were burns along her side, and one of her legs, no, not quite a leg. Something jointed differently, hung at an unnatural angle. "Hey," he whispered, unsure if she could even understand him. "You're alive. You're—" The moment his hand brushed her shoulder, a shock of light rippled through the air. Images exploded behind his eyes, not memories, but impressions. A sky filled with twin suns, the echo of 1,000 minds speaking at once, and pain, immense and wordless. He stumbled back, clutching his head. The images vanished as quickly as they'd come. The girl stirred, barely. Her lips moved, but the sound that came wasn't in his ears. It was in his mind. "Don't let them find me." Her voice was delicate, trembling like glass about to break. Then her eyes rolled back, and she went still. For a long moment, Elias just knelt there, heart pounding. He looked up. In the distance, faint streaks of light crossed the sky. Smaller ships, searching. Whoever they were coming. He didn't think. He acted. He tore open the side of the rover, pulling out an old thermal blanket and his medkit. With trembling hands, he wrapped her as gently as he could. Her skin was cool, almost metallic, but her pulse, yes. She had a pulse, fluttered faintly against his fingers. Hanging there, he muttered, unsure why he cared so much. You didn't crash all the way to this planet just to die here. He lifted her. She weighed less than she looked, almost weightless, and carried her out of the crater. The moment he stepped onto the open desert, he heard it, a low, mechanical hum building in the distance. The searchers were near. He laid her in the back seat of the rover and slammed the engine to life. Sand exploded beneath the tires as he gunned it toward home. The desert blurred by in streaks of silver and black dot behind him. A shadow passed overhead, triangular, silent, sweeping the dunes with blinding light. He cut the rover's power, coasting down behind a dune, heart racing. The light swept past, then moved on. Only when the silence returned did he dare breathe. He turned to look at her again. She was still unconscious, but something about her had changed. The faint veins of light under her skin had brightened, pulsing in rhythm with the engine. It was as if she was sensing to his world somehow. Elias stared, a dozen questions clawing at his thoughts. Who was she? What kind of people left one of their own behind to die? And why, out of all the places in the universe, had she fallen here to him? He didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't let her go. Not to the government, not to whoever was hunting her. As dawn began to creep over the desert horizon, Elias reached the old cabin. He carried her inside, laying her gently on his worktable among tools, wires, and pieces of old technology. Her breathing was faint, but steady. He sat beside her, the desert light spilling in through the cracked blinds, and for the first time in years, Elias felt something stir in him, something he thought he'd buried long ago. Hope. He didn't know it yet, but that night would change everything. For her, for him, and for two species that had never been meant to meet. Elias barely slept. The first rays of morning turned the desert into molten gold. But inside his cabin, the world was shadow and silence. The alien girl lay motionless on his worktable, wrapped in the thermal blanket. Her faint silver glow had dimmed overnight. He had seen people die before, soldiers in the colonies, engineers caught in reactor bursts, but this felt different. There was something sacred, almost fragile, about her, and she wasn't just dying. She was fading. The engineer's instinct Telius switched into problem-solving mode, the one that had once made him valuable to the orbital cores before everything fell apart. He set up his diagnostic scanner, an old handheld device used for analyzing fusion conduits. It wasn't made for biology, but he figured it was better than nothing. He aimed it at her chest. The readings came back. Nonsensical. Unknown matter composition. Energy source detected. Biosynthetic integration, 89%. Biosynthetic, he murmured. Half organic, half machine. Her spinal column, or what passed for it, was glowing faintly blue. The scanner indicated massive damage there, as if the neural pathways were severed. She was paralyzed. He ran a trembling hand through his hair. You're a damn miracle of engineering, and I don't even know how to keep you alive. The first Sparklius scavenged through his workshop for parts, power cells, nanofiber cables, a half-dead med drone. Over the next 2 days, he barely ate, barely spoke. He worked like a man possessed. He grafted sensors to her chest, connected power feeds through insulated cables, and attached microheating pads to stabilize her temperature. He didn't know if any of it was helping, until, on the third night, her eyes flickered open. He froze. Her gaze met his, luminous blue, unfocused, filled with pain. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Hey, he said softly. Easy, you're safe. She blinked slowly, disoriented, then tried to move. The effort sent a spasm through her entire body. Elias grabbed her hand gently. Don't, you're hurt. Your spine, or whatever you've got back there, it's damaged. Just stay still. Her eyes fluttered, and suddenly a voice filled his mind, not spoken, not even whispered. Where am I? The words weren't sound, but thought, clean and sharp, resonating deep inside his skull. Elias recoiled. You can talk. In my head. Her brow furrowed faintly. Your mind is. Loud, strange. He almost laughed, partly from relief, partly disbelief. That makes two of us. Over the next few hours. Elias learned fragments. Her name, or what his language could approximate, was Lyra. Her people came from a world she called Oravan, a place orbiting twin suns beyond the Veil of Fire. She had been part of a diplomatic mission, sent to stop a civil war tearing her civilization apart. But her convoy had been ambushed by the Ascendants, those who had chosen to shed flesh and live as pure machine consciousness. They viewed any organic being as an evolutionary error. They called us soft matter, Lyra told him in his mind. They said the universe belongs only to logic, not to hearts. She had resisted the conversion process. The Ascendants had disabled her ship, crippled her body, and left her adrift in space. Her vessel had fallen through an uncharted wormhole and crashed here on Earth. The carriage of Aurelius couldn't understand why, but he felt an unshakable responsibility for her. He rigged up a crude exoskeletal frame using scrap servos, carbon struts, and pieces from an old mining suit. He designed it to support her from the waist down, something to replace the damaged alien spinal architecture until she could heal. When he first fitted it to her, she grimaced, face tightening in pain. I know, he said, sweating as he adjusted the clamps. But this should let your nervous system reroute signals through the prosthetic pathways. At least, that's the theory. She stared at him, her head tilted slightly. You risk much for me. Someone has to. Why? He hesitated. Because whoever you are, you didn't deserve to be left behind. Her eyes softened. On Oravan, compassion is rare. It makes you vulnerable. You humans, you wear it like armor. Elias smiled faintly. You'd be surprised how few of us do anymore. Learning humanity days passed. The cabin became a sanctuary, half alien infirmary, half workshop. Lyra's strength began to return. The exoskeleton allowed her to sit upright for the first time. Her luminescent veins grew brighter, pulsing softly when she concentrated. She was fascinated by human things, the way Elias drank coffee, the way the wind howled against the roof, the way he whistled tunelessly while soldering parts. One evening, he found her staring at the flame of a candle. Fire, she said, her telepathic tone filled with wonder. On Oravan, we control fusion. We can ignite suns. But this tiny chaos you hold in your hand, it feels alive. He chuckled. Yeah, fire's like us. Dangerous if you don't respect it. Beautiful if you do. She smiled, an expression that made his chest ache in a way he didn't understand. You speak as though you've known pain. Elias hesitated, staring into the candle with her. Yeah, I've seen what people do when they stop caring, when they start thinking they're better off without emotion. Sounds like your Ascendants, doesn't it? It does. There was silence between them, the kind that was warm, not empty. The stranger within. But even as she healed, strange things began to happen. Electronics in the cabin flickered when she grew upset. Radio signals whispered voices in languages he didn't know. At night, her body emitted faint electromagnetic waves that made the air hum like distant thunder. Once, he found her weeping silently, though her tears were silver, glinting like mercury. I hear them sometimes, she confessed. The others, my kind, they're calling me back, but not to save me, to erase what's left. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we'll make sure they don't find you. She looked at him with an intensity that made him forget to breathe. Why do you say we? You owe me nothing. Maybe not, he said softly, but I don't like bullies, especially cosmic ones. Lyra's lips trembled. Then she smiled again, fragile but real. You are a strange creature, Elias Rourke. He laughed. Takes one to know one. Awakening late one night, a sandstorm swept across the desert. The wind howled against the walls like an angry god. Power flickered, then died. Elias grabbed a lantern and went to check the generator, but before he could, a pulse of light filled the room. Lyra was sitting upright, eyes glowing bright white, the exoskeleton trembling around her. Sparks danced from her fingertips. Lyra, Elias shouted. What's happening? It's repairing me, she said, her voice layered, almost echoing. My systems are integrating with the exoskeleton. It's learning. The light around her intensified. Tools rattled on the shelves. The cabin shuddered. Then, with a blinding flash, it stopped. When Elias's eyes adjusted, she was breathing heavily, sweat, or whatever passed for it, on her brow. But she was smiling. I can feel my legs. He stared at her. You can move." She nodded weakly. "Only a little. But it's a start." Elias laughed, overwhelmed. "You're a damn miracle." "No," she said softly, her glowing eyes meeting his. "You are. You fixed what my own kind abandoned." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the storm screamed across the desert. But inside, there was only the faint rhythm of her breathing and the quiet hum of life returning. Elias realized, with a mix of awe and fear, that she wasn't just healing physically, she was changing, becoming something new, something neither human nor alien, and he was changing too, for the first time in years. He didn't feel alone. The desert had grown restless. For weeks, the horizon had been quiet, the nights filled only with wind, and the faint hum of Lyra's recovering energy systems. But lately, the stars seemed sharper. The air vibrated with something unseen, like a storm building just beyond the edge of the world. Elias felt it first, the uneasy silence, the faint static in the air that made the hair on his arms rise. His radio, once filled with static, now picked up bursts of strange frequencies, short, staccato pulses that no human transmitter could produce. Lyra knew what it meant. "They've found the signal of my crash site," she said one night, her voice trembling through his mind. "The ascendants are coming." Signs in the sandby then. Lyra could walk again, carefully, haltingly, her exoskeletal frame humming softly with every step. The device had become a part of her, fusing to her systems in ways even Elias couldn't explain. But her newfound mobility came at a price. The energy readings she emitted were growing stronger. Elias noticed that whenever she concentrated, the lights dimmed and the air filled with static. She was like a living beacon. Elias reinforced the cabin's shielding with copper mesh and sandbags. He covered every window and buried old EMP jammers in the dunes around the property. He'd learned paranoia from experience. Once, long ago, while working for the orbital cores, he had seen what the government did when they found something not human. He wasn't going to let them take Lyra, not them, and not her own kind. Echoes of pursuit started small, strange shadows in the night sky, like faint glimmers of glass moving against the stars. Then came the noises, low, mechanical hums that passed overhead at impossible speeds. Silent 1 second, deafening the next. Lyra would wake from her sleep, her eyes wide with terror. "They're scanning," she whispered. "Their drones see by sound and electromagnetic resonance. If they find me, they'll erase everything. Me, you, even this place." Elias gripped her hand. Let them try. But he knew she was right. The Ascendants weren't soldiers. They were hunters without mercy. Machines with the cold perfection of gods. He started packing. Tools, rations, water. The rover's engine roared to life once more. When Lyra protested, he cut her off. "You said they're looking for energy signatures, right? Then we'll move at night. Keep low, off-grid. They won't find what's not there. You would leave everything." He looked at her, eyes dark but steady. "Things can be rebuilt. You can't." Lyra stared at him for a long time before whispering, almost to herself, "Humans are strange. You care about the wrong things, and somehow, they're the right ones." The flight north they left under moonlight, the rover skimming across the dunes in silence. The cabin, their brief home, faded behind them, swallowed by distance and darkness. For days they traveled north through wastelands and ghost towns, abandoned refineries, the ruins of old war zones. Elias scavenged batteries and scrap metal wherever he could. Lyra's body needed energy, and though she tried to draw from sunlight, her systems were unstable. Alien technology struggling to coexist with Earth's atmosphere. At night, they camped beneath the open sky. Elias would light a small fire, its reflection flickering in Lyra's luminous eyes. She told him stories, fragments of her world, of crystalline cities that floated above oceans of plasma, of beings who lived for centuries inside shared neural networks, of her father, a bioarchitect who believed that life was meant to evolve with the machine, not into it. "He taught me that emotion isn't weakness," she said softly. "It's proof we still remember what it means to exist." Elias poked at the fire with a stick. "He sounds like a smart man." He was, until the Ascendants took him. They hollowed him out, left only his logic behind. Her voice broke. For the first time, Elias reached for her hand, and to his surprise, she didn't pull away. They sat there in silence, two lonely souls beneath the infinite dark, bound by the simple act of being alive that the first attack had happened on the fifth night. They were resting in the ruins of an old radio observatory, giant dishes half buried in sand, their metal frames twisted like bones. Elias was checking the rover's battery when Lyra suddenly stiffened. The air shimmered, the temperature dropping several degrees. "They're here." Before he could react, a blinding beam of blue light swept over the horizon. The air screamed, a sound beyond hearing, vibrating in his skull. A shape descended from the clouds, sleek, angular, and utterly silent. It wasn't a ship so much as a shadow that bent the starlight around it. Drones poured from its underside. Hovering like metallic wasps, Elias grabbed his EMP rifle, a prototype he'd once built during his time with the Corps, and fired. The first pulse hit a drone squarely, sending it crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. The others adapted instantly, splitting apart and reforming midair, their bodies reconfiguring like liquid metal. Lyra stood at his side, her eyes glowing with fierce white light. Her voice echoed inside his head, layered and powerful. "Stay behind me." Her exoskeleton unfolded like wings, energy surging through it. She raised her hands, and the air rippled, a wave of pure force that hurled the nearest drones into the observatory's walls, crushing them like paper. But more came. Always more. Elias fired again, heart pounding. "There's too many. Then we finish this together." She stepped forward, the glow from her body intensifying until she was almost blinding. The air around her shimmered with electromagnetic distortion. The remaining drones hesitated. Then one by one, their lights flickered out. Lyra collapsed. Elias caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was burning hot, her pulse erratic. "Lyra, stay with me. I had to overload them." Her voice faded into static. Elias carried her into the observatory, laying her beneath the central dish. Outside, the night burned with falling debris, the last remnants of the drones dissolving into dust. The choice when she woke hours later. Elias was still there, his arm around her shoulders. Exhaustion etched deep into his face. "You should have run," she whispered weakly. He looked at her, eyes bloodshot but fierce. "I told you. Not without you. You risked your life for something you barely understand." He gave a tired smile. "You think I understand people any better?" That made her laugh, a sound like wind chimes caught in a storm. "They'll send more," she said after a moment. "The ascendants never stop. If I stay, this world will suffer." Elias shook his head. "Then we find a way to stop them. You're not alone anymore." She looked at him, really looked, and in that moment, her gaze softened with something he'd never seen before. "I used to believe humans were primitive," she said quietly. "But now, I think you might be what we lost." The rising sun bled across the sky, washing the broken observatory in red and gold. Elias helped her stand. Her legs trembled, but she leaned into him for balance. Together, they looked toward the light, to survivors bound by fate, preparing for whatever came next. In the distance, the faint hum of engines echoed once more. The hunt wasn't over, but neither were they. The dawn after the battle felt hollow. The desert was quiet again, too quiet. The dunes were littered with fragments of metal and ash, the remnants of ascendant drones that had turned to dust in the rising sun. The air still shimmered faintly with static. Elias and Lyra had survived, but neither felt victorious. Lyra sat beside the wreck of the old observatory dish, her silver skin dimmed to pale gray. The exoskeleton that had once gleamed with alien light now flickered weakly, its energy reserves nearly gone. She watched the horizon in silence while Elias worked nearby, salvaging what he could from the drones, wiring, plasma cores, microcircuitry. His hands were blistered and blackened from days of work, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. He had to find a way to keep her alive. The dying signal. Be the second day, Lyra's condition worsened. Her energy field destabilized, pulsing erratically. Her voice, that calm, melodic whisper in his mind, grew faint. "Elias, you can't fix what's dying." He slammed a wrench down on the table. "Don't say that. My systems were never meant to exist here. Your world's atmosphere corrodes the biosynthetic lattice. I'm unraveling." He turned toward her, eyes bloodshot. You're not a machine, Lyra. You heal. You fight. That's life. It doesn't just unravel. I wish I believed that. He knelt beside her. Her skin was cool now, her glow faint as candlelight. Then believe in me, he said. I'll get you through this. I swear. Her eyes softened. You always say that as if you can move mountains. I've already crossed galaxies with you, he said quietly. Mountains are nothing. The signal to the Starcelias knew he needed help, but there was no one on Earth who could give it. The Ascendants would be back soon. The survivors of the drone fleet would have already transmitted their location. There was only one slim chance left. Lyra's ship had broadcast distress frequencies into space during its crash. If they could amplify that signal, maybe, just maybe, some fragment of her old fleet would still be listening. He climbed to the top of the observatory's main dish and began rewiring. Lyra, too weak to move, guided him telepathically. The frequency must align with the quantum bridge field. Your planet's magnetosphere will distort it otherwise. I'll compensate, he muttered, adjusting a coil. If I can feed your bioenergy into the array, we might get enough range to— No. Her voice carried sudden fear. If you link me directly, it'll drain what's left of me. I won't survive the transmission. Elias froze. His hands shook. There has to be another way. There isn't. The words lingered in the air like the echo of a funeral bell. Lyra looked up at him, her expression both serene and unbearably sad. Elias, if they come, they'll destroy your world to get to me. This is how we stop that. He shook his head violently. No, you're not dying for them. Not after everything. I'm not dying for them, she said softly. I'm doing it for you. The last stand by the third night. The sky split again. A vast, angular shadow descended from orbit, blotting out the stars. It wasn't a ship, it was a fortress, a hive mind of ascendant consciousness wrapped in metal and light. The desert turned to glass beneath its radiance. They've come for me, Lyra said, her telepathic voice trembling. All of them. Elias stood beside her, EMP rifle slung across his chest. Though he knew it was useless against something that large, we finish what we started, he said grimly. Lyra's faint smile was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. You always were too human to give up. She reached out, touching his forehead. Her skin sparked faintly. A pulse of energy passed between them. For a second, Elias saw flashes of her memory. A city of light, oceans of plasma, and a sky filled with creatures made of thought. Then, just as quickly, the visions faded. Now you'll understand what I am, she whispered. She rose, her exoskeleton flaring one last time. The light from her body surged until it rivaled the ship above. The fortress opened its maw, a weaponized aperture glowing like a newborn star. Elias grabbed her arm. If you go through with this, you'll die. Lyra turned to him, eyes filled with starlight. Not die, change. Then she stepped forward and raised her hands to the sky. The pulsive desert ignited. A column of energy erupted from the observatory, spearing the heavens. The fortress shuddered as its systems faltered. Lyra's consciousness expanded, merging with the frequency Elias had built. Her voice echoed across his mind, layered, infinite. Elias, hold on to me. He felt his body lifting from the ground, the world dissolving into light and sound. Around him, memories bled into each other. The moment he'd found her in the crater, her first words, her first smile. He saw her as she truly was, not flesh or machine, but a being of memory and emotion, a living symphony of starlight. The fortress began to crumble, its drones falling like rain. The energy that had fueled its perfection turned against it, devouring its own code. But Lyra's light grew dimmer. Her form flickered, fading between substance and shadow. Lyra, he shouted, reaching for her. Don't leave me. Her voice, soft and fading, brushed his mind. You gave me a reason to live. Don't forget what that means. And then the light consumed everything. The morning after Elias awoke in the ruins of the observatory, the sun had risen again, and the air was still. The fortress was gone. No trace of it remained except a faint aurora shimmering across the sky, colors no human had ever seen. He stumbled to his feet, calling her name. Lyra, Lyra. Only the wind answered. Then he saw it, a faint glow amid the sand. A small sphere of silver light hovered where she had stood. When he approached, It drifted toward him and rested against his palm, pulsing once like a heartbeat. Her voice whispered in his mind, faint but clear, "I am not gone. Just beyond your sky." He fell to his knees, tears cutting paths through the dust on his face. "I'll find you," he said hoarsely. "One day, I'll find you." The sphere pulsed again, and then, like a falling star, it shot upward, vanishing into the heavens. Elias watched until the last glimmer disappeared. The promissayers passed. Legends spread across the fringes of Earth, of strange lights seen in the Nevada desert, of machines that awoke by themselves, whispering in languages no human knew. Elias built again, not out of desperation this time, but out of hope. He devoted himself to understanding what Lyra had been, decoding the fragments she had left behind. He transformed the observatory into something new, a transmitter, a beacon made from the wreckage of alien technology and human ingenuity. Every night, he sent a message into the stars, 3 simple words, "I remember you," and somewhere, beyond the veil of fire, a being of starlight smiled. Epilogue. The return decades later, when the world had changed and Elias had grown old, the night sky over Earth lit up once more, not with fire, but with color. A ship descended, sleek and luminous, bearing the same silver light he had once seen in her eyes. He stepped outside, his hands trembling, his heart impossibly full. The hatch opened. A figure stepped through the glow, not entirely alien, not entirely human, but something in between. She looked at him, her voice both in his mind and on the wind. "You waited." Elias smiled through tears. "You came back, I told you. The stars remember." And when she took his hand, the desert around them filled with light, the kind that could only come from love that had crossed not just worlds, but the boundaries between life and forever.